Hi folks, it's Tino here with the countdown to kick-off ahead of Celtic's trip to Paisley, where we face St Mirren and a 12 o'clock, maybe a 12:30 kick-off, Paddy, but should have checked. Joined here by Paddy for this one. Paddy, your thoughts ahead of Matchday 3 in this season's Scottish Premiership?
Yeah, just obviously on the back of our chat about our transfers, we're just kind of looking to see how the team are settled for this game. Is it going to be Matt O'Reilly's last game? Will he even be involved in the squad? We've seen that Kyogo trained today. Will he be involved in the squad? So a few questions for us coming up over the weekend. Seems as if a few of the news outlets are really going with the line that Rodgers has quashed the idea of Kyogo going to Man City as well. So I just think it's one thing we want, especially leading into the game next week, is we want that settled team. We want the dynamic to continue because we've been playing some scintillating stuff for the beginning of this season, and I just want that to continue for us before this first block of fixtures is done.
There's been a wee bit of concern among some fans that because Celtic are playing so well, and we are playing well, 3 wins from 3, 9 goals scored in those 3 games, an average of 3 goals a game. Some fans are concerned that maybe some at board level would say, maybe you don't need that much support, you don't need much by way of new signings. What do you think of that theory?
Yeah, I think that the board will look at that. I think that they will look at how well the team has been playing, but ultimately what we need to be ready and what we need to make sure that doesn't happen like it did last season is that it's a long season. We had so many injuries at the beginning of last season, and they can spring upon us at any time. Now, fortunately for Celtic, we kept ourselves in a good title race up until the point that we started getting our players back and gave us a strong run-in for the remainder of the season. But that still has to be said. It could happen the other way around where we start losing some of our most important players come the run-in. So I think it's all right to sit on your hands and think, yeah, it's a good enough squad to go and win the league, but I don't think a manager will be sitting thinking that.
I don't. And you and I recorded a transfer special earlier, and that's available wherever folks listen to their podcast right now. But the question is, will Celtic as a board, as a club, match the ambition that Brendan Rodgers has? And like any manager, managers get greedy at transfer time, transfer windows. They want to keep their best players, and they also want to add 2 or 3 on. And now's not the show to labour on that. This is, a focus on the game against St Mirren. But do you think Brendan Rodgers is going to get the 2 or 3 that he still very much needs?
I think it's all very much up in the air just now, and as we kind of mentioned in that show, there's plenty of talk about players leaving. It's very, very slim pickings for players coming in.
Bit thin on the ground. Lots of rumours about Kyogo's, CCVs, Rio Hitatis and Matt O'Reilly's going out.
Yeah.
Not so many rumours about who comes in. Let's see. Just finally, at the moment, on Brendan Rodgers' press conference, as you would expect at this time of the season, a lot of the questions and a lot of the responses from Brendan Rodgers were regarding the transfer situation. But where do you think he's at in terms of, I don't know, his buoyancy levels? Do you think he's pretty energised at this moment in time?
I think he's really happy with what he's getting from the players. He spoke about the input from them from the get-go of this season. It's just been of a really, really high standard. When you look at the past few games, we're blowing teams away. And I do think that you take into consideration the pre-season fixtures as well. The level of like the quality of football that we've been playing has been a joy to see. We're really seeing the fruits of the labour from Nicholas Kuhn. He's definitely come into a bit of form, and then even just looking at Daizen Maeda last week as well. Yeah, all right, fairly scrappy goals, but he's putting himself in those positions, and I don't think there's many players in that league that will take the hit, and make sure that he's going to be the one that's like tumbling in a goal. I think he's always going to put himself into those positions, and there's a real drive, there's a real bit between the teeth from the guys that are there at the moment, and it's like we've said every week throughout the summer, to go and add to that, my God, it would be exciting. We began this Champions League campaign thinking here we really should be looking at least a minimum of getting to the playoffs.
A top 2 finish in the Champions League.
Winning the full thing, I've said it before.
Let's see. Last question from a transfer kind of angle, but I think we're all pretty much resigned to Matt O'Reilly moving on. Do you think it's potentially the last we'll see of Kyogo in a Celtic shirt?
Again, I just really think it's all up in the air. I do. I think that we've heard the comments from Pep Guardiola today explaining that he doesn't know if there'll be any more signings. But then, if those conversations have taken place, and as I say, a pull to a club like Man City over Celtic, yeah, we know what the infrastructure of each club is like, and we know what the history of each club is like. I think that ideally we would love to see him stay, but ideally I think at that later part of his career, I wouldn't be surprised if he really wants this move. If that doesn't come into play and he doesn't get the move, is he sitting happy? Are other clubs kind of lurking around looking at the situation too? And did he get desperate in the final days of the window? A lot remains to be seen.
It could mess with any player's head. You know, Man City are a big club, and with big clubs come big wages. And I don't know what Kyogo's getting. Maybe, I don't know, anywhere between 25 and 30 at Celtic, give or take.
I'd say maybe more after the renewal last season.
Okay,
I would.
You could maybe be doubling that if you make that kind of move. So that's the kind of thinking that we're going to be going on in Kyogo's head at this moment in time, and that could unnerve him. There's an important game this weekend, there's a big game next weekend as well that we all know about, so let's see how that affects Kyogo and if he's still here come next Sunday. Let's take a look at what we think the manager might do then for the weekend. Generally speaking, over those opening 3 games, so the 4-0 win over Kelly, the 2-0 win over Hibs, and the 3-1 win over Hibs. Have I got those 3 right?
You've spot on.
He's not made many changes. There was a small suggestion that maybe he would change his goalie last week and put Sinisalo in as the League Cup goalie. He's not gone for that. So let's start at the back. You and I have had some kind of fun discussions about Kasper Schmeichel and how he arrived here at Celtic, but from what you've seen so far in those opening 3 games, are you pretty pleased with what he's bringing to the party?
Absolutely, and I'll go on record again in stating that I don't have anything against Kasper Schmeichel.
What's your issue with Kasper Schmeichel is what I'm saying here?
I think the big thing for me is the lack of scouting from Celtic, and again I think he's going to be a great capture for us, and I do think hopefully he can do a job for us in Europe as well. I loved Cameron Carter-Vickers' comments about him during the week. He was speaking really highly of the ability, the aura that he's brought in since he's joined, and saying that it's really good to see like the level of professionalism, what he's bringing to the back line, and I think you can kind of see that translate onto the park, to be honest. I think he seems to be a real motivator for the likes of Liam Scales and Greg Taylor. I think more so Scales, with that little hesitancy that we've spoke about with him. He seems to be one that's like right on his case in terms of supporting him. Anytime he makes a pass forward, or anytime he brings the ball out for the back line, or has a very good tackle or clearance, he is a motivator. I think that's a natural thing from Kasper Schmeichel, and I think that you look at what you have with Joe Hart. Joe Hart was a motivator, but Joe Hart also, I think, played with a lot of anxiety at points as well. I think throughout his full career, which led to some like high profile mistakes that he'd made at certain points with England and City. Whereas Schmeichel, every goalkeeper's got a mistake in them. I think it comes down to that tenacity and are you going to be focused enough? Are you going to be concentrating enough? And I do think that that's where Kasper Schmeichel comes in at a different level than a lot of goalkeepers. But having said that, I think he just brings that settled tone and that continuation for that back four as well. And a back four that we're very happy with Joe Hart behind them. But you remember the games when we were without Cameron Carter-Vickers, we hadn't a settled left-hand side defender. It was all very much a full rotation going on in our back line. And we've seen those moments of worry from Joe Hart and some mistakes creep him in because he didn't have a settled back four. No Alistair Johnson for a while as well. And then the difference it was when it was a lot more of a settled back line, and he needed that, whereas I think Kasper Schmeichel dictates his back line. I really do.
And I think Celtic's back four, or the recognised back four, plus the backup defenders, they'll have watched Joe Hart leave the club in summer, and they'll have been thinking, that's a big character to replace. He's an excellent goalkeeper to replace, but a big personality as well. And I think when those players were made aware that Kasper Schmeichel was coming in, I think there'll have been a degree of confidence amongst them when they realised that such an experienced guy was coming to work behind them and hopefully build on what they'd been doing over the last couple of seasons. Yeah. And on that, I think at the moment, and again, surplus to additional players coming in, but at the moment there's a fairly settled back four at Celtic. I think the first choice back four tells its own tale just now. We know it's Alistair Johnson, we know it's CCV. I think most folks are delighted with those two. Less so, not to make this a negative, but less so on the left-hand side, where I'd be surprised if it's not Liam Scales and Greg Taylor starting. Mm-hmm. I think Greg Taylor had a pretty decent game last week. I think he's had a pretty decent start to the campaign. I don't want to revisit old ground, but Liam Scales less so. A couple of shaky moments. Celtic were very comfy. We won 3-1 in the end against Hibs. There was a couple of moments where just cheap giving up of possession, and it's Liam Scales is at a crossroads in his Celtic career. Celtic should be signing somebody, and as and when they do, he should be standing up and saying, I'm still your guy, and it's my shirt at this moment in time, and here's a challenge for the new guy. I'm not sure if that's the case right now. I think if a new guy comes in, he slots in right away.
And that could be the challenge set out by our manager as well. How does he handle that pressure? Because I do think it comes down to pressure for Liam Scales. I think that ultimately he has been brought in from the cold last season, and it was a bit of a ropey season. He stood up when counted in some fixtures. I go back to the game at Ibrox with him and Lagerbielke, but we know he's not comfortable being a ball playing centre half. We know that. Positionally, he's been questioned as well. On the backs against the wall, Liam Scales is a solid defender. I'm not going to dispute that. But that's not what Celtic need. I've said that in the weekly show last Monday, that we need players that are going to bring us out for the back, but they're going to be sharp, they're going to be precise in their passing. I think Liam Scales probably takes 2-3 more touches than any player on the park. And it's nothing against him. He is playing to the maximum of his ability. Does he get better? I don't know if it comes down to a mental side. And maybe that's where Brendan Rodgers is trying to tap in with him. Maybe he is turning around and saying, do you know what? Prove me why I shouldn't go and sign another centre-half. And that's where we're actually seeing a few more errors coming in at the first few games of the season.
Maybe. I just think also at any level of football, competition is healthy.
Yeah.
It makes whoever's in the position better, or it should make them strive to be better. I don't think there's genuine competition for Liam Scales' shirt or Greg Taylor's shirt at this moment in time. And fingers crossed, let's hope that changes over the next 7 days. Getting into midfield, there's questions over what Celtic's midfield is going to look like moving forward. A lot of speculation this week, continued speculation about Matt O'Reilly to Brighton, and also renewed speculation about Rio Hatate to Leicester. We can accept that we'll lose O'Reilly. I don't think we can handle losing both of them at this moment in time, such as their importance to Celtic's midfield. But let's look at the here and now. Sunday's game against St Mirren. Callum McGregor will absolutely start in the number 6, and is it Matt O'Reilly and Rio Hatate in front of him, or is there too much going on with O'Reilly? Does he move on?
I think he plays. I think he's been there for the beginning of this season. He's given 110% as usual. I think he will start, and I think that he'll want to say his goodbyes to the travelling support. I think as well, I don't know the ins and outs of what's happening. I do think that the deal is imminent, but I've also got the belief that until Celtic have maybe got that replacement ready, he's not going anywhere. But I definitely think it'll be this window.
Okay, but in the meantime, Sunday at least, do you think it'll be Callum McGregor, Matt O'Reilly, Rio Hatate?
Yeah, I do. Left field decision on that would be Bernardo starting. That
3 at the moment, aside from Bernardo, it's undoubtedly Celtic's strongest midfield 3, but it looks likely to change, and that's a challenge for Bernardo. We've spent a few quid on him. I think Rodgers rates him, and I think there's a challenge for him to come in. Iwata has disappeared a wee bit.
Yeah, I think
Thiago Holm was around at the start. He's drifted the last couple of games. I'm not sure there's much competition apart from Paulo Bernardo that could step into our midfield right now.
The other side of the coin is that he does play Bernardo from the beginning and gives him an hour on the thinking of he's likely going to start next Sunday.
That's it. That's a tricky one. It's going to be interesting to see, because we accept that O'Reilly's here for the here and now, but that can change very quickly, and Celtic have got a huge game coming up next Sunday, so that'll be an interesting one to watch in terms of the lineup. Up top, last week's show, Paddy, the speculation was Adam Ida set to return to Celtic's front line after his $8.5 million move from Norwich. Benched, Maeda started. I don't think any of us really seen that coming. Kyogo obviously had the niggle with his shoulder the week before. There's a question. Does Kyogo come back in from the start? Does Ida make his first start as a permanent player? Or do you stick with the guy that got 2 goals against Hibs?
I've got a feeling it's going to be the guy that got 2 goals against Hibs.
Right,
I do. I think he's... I think Ida will maybe need to get back up to speed again.
He looked a wee bit rusty, didn't he?
He did. He's been in and out of the Norwich side. Makes sense. He's obviously stated his intentions. He's wanted to come here, and the deal's done now. He'll just need to get used to it again, get up to speed. I'm pretty sure that it was precautionary of just giving him half an hour last week, and I think it probably will be the same on Sunday. I don't think Kyogo features
at all.
I don't know. I don't think. Maybe on the bench, I just don't think he features.
I did make the point that I think Brendan Rodgers did seem a wee bit prickly when he was talking about the ongoing shoulder issue that Kyogo has, maybe suggesting that the player should have had it dealt with by now. It's the player's call, whether to get surgery or not, and Kyogo's made the call not to. And I think Brendan Rodgers seemed a wee bit annoyed, because it means he doesn't know whether to stick or twist. Can I rely on this guy for another 50-game season? He managed it last season. Kyogo was Celtic's highest appearance maker last season. Credit to him. But we can see that on any given game, any given heavy challenge can put him out for a couple of weeks. So it's a frustration for a manager there. And you're right, I think it's a real dilemma there. I think he probably does start on the bench, but who knows? And again, if he doesn't feature, if you find a squad that's named at 11ish on Sunday morning and Kyogo's not in it, then everyone loses their mind about the fact that he might well be off. So who knows? But I think you're probably right. Daizen Maeda done very little wrong last week, got his 2 goals and put Celtic on easy street. What do you do in the wings? I think a lot of us are really excited by Nicholas Kuhn. I think he's got to start on right wing. And actually, we're early days, we're only 3 games in, but he has been a real shining light so far this season.
It's the drive and determination from him. I go back to that game, the debut against Hibs, and I remember thinking he just didn't seem comfortable or know what his next kind of move was on the ball. And there was pace, there was a bit of flair, but there was no real decisiveness in what he was going to do next. That's where it's changed. And I go back to my comments made. I do see the similarities to James Forrest and how neat and tidy he can keep the ball close to him. I think that's super important for a winger at Celtic, because it's finding those killer passes, it's finding those killer moments against a back line of 10 people when you're kind of looking at what he's trying to break down. And I think that he is going to be he's going to be crucial for us this season, and he's a player you want to keep fit as well, because I do think he's had some injury worries as well. But for me, he's going to be a main man this year, and definitely out in the right.
I think so. We'll get into St Mirren in a wee bit more detail just shortly, but you mentioned he might well come up against 10 guys. Do you think that's what Stevie Robinson does at home with this St Mirren side? Is that his approach?
No, I think it would be a bit more of a free hit for Stevie Robinson, considering they're now they're not doing anything in Europe. He's got a team. He's brought in some strong players that were hopefully going to help with that push to get into the group stages. Go and take that quality that they've shown over the last season, and even actually the games in Europe as well. They looked pretty good in some of them. Go and take that quality and see what you can do against Celtic. See who can bid in.
Aye, and see if you can maybe do something different against Celtic. Aye. We know that most teams will park the bus and go 10 behind the ball. I think Steve Robinson's a good coach. I think he's proven that. And actually, I was really keen to see St Mirren make progress. I'd half an eye on some of the European games, and I was a bit disappointed they fell short. But they're up against some really quality opposition, so it's a tall order. Just in terms of that last place in Celtic's front line, so if we're going with Daizen through the middle, Nicholas Kuhn out on the right hand side, is it the experienced old campaigner of James A. Forrest on the left?
Got to be again another player that's looking very, very sharp at the beginning of this season. He's not looked out of place, and I think that what a resurgence from him, as we spoke about. He really brought a lot to us in the second half of last season after being way out in the cold, considering there was chats of him leaving in January. He's huge for us, and listen, even if another winger comes in, they'll be trying to get the jersey of him as well. I really do. I really do believe that he is one of those players that he will be in and out this side this season, because actually 31, 32 years old, still got a bit of pace behind him, but it's how comfortable he is in pressure situations that he's got to start.
His ball retention is excellent. He rarely gives the ball away these days, and it's something that he's really... I think his game has evolved in the last few seasons, and he's really brought that to the fore. I need to double check this stat, but I'm sure I heard in the last week or two that if he plays this weekend and next weekend, that's 500 appearances for Celtic. I think that is right. Somebody will definitely shoot me down and tell me it's wrong, but at the moment we'll go with it, Paddy, because I'm pretty sure that's the stat. And good luck to James Forrest. He's been great for Celtic, and hopefully there's still a few more seasons to go yet. That would leave some decent quality in the bench. Ida and Kyogo, primarily from a striker point of view. Paulo Bernardo, who we've mentioned. Louis Palmer, Yang. I know a lot of the guys that follow the show aren't convinced, but there's decent creative options there if things aren't quite working out for Celtic, and it's good to have that depth in the team, but I think we need more for going into Europe. I've mentioned that I think Celtic's strongest 12, 13, 14 is decent. Mm-hmm. When you start to get into reserves, 15, 16, 17, less so, and that's where a 50-game season and a Champions League campaign that'll include 8 games at the top level really starts to stretch your squad. So I think there's no doubt, you can see it on paper, there's additions required. Let's take a look at St Mirren. So we've spoken about, briefly about where they're at under Stevie Robinson. Obviously they had a chance to qualify for the Conference League, but it didn't quite work out. I'm sure that the European distraction welcome as it will have been, and it'd have been great to qualify, hasn't helped them domestically. They did start the campaign with a good win. They beat Hibs 3-0 on match day 1. They've since then drawn and lost to Bran, so that's them out of Europe. And in between times, they lost 3-1 at Pittodrie. No shame in that. They're looking okay under, is it Peter Taylor? Jimmy, who's Peter? Who knows? And they lost 1-0 to Dundee United. So obviously Jim Goodwin, former St Mirren manager, steering Dundee United to the 1-0 win last week. But I think we've seen enough of Stevie Robinson's St Mirren over the last season or so to know that they're a pretty decent side, and they should take confidence at home. And if you're going to get knocked out of Europe, you might as well come back with a game against Celtic and try and prove you've still got something to offer.
Yeah, as I said, he's brought in some players that were hopefully going to be a part of that European run. I think Sean Rooney been one of the most notable signings for them this season. They'll be itching to try and show their worth and show what they can do, and I do think it will be a tough game. What we don't need is any more unrest outside for Celtic and any more speculation of players leaving, and just make sure that we're good to go for it. I do think we will kick on for the start that we've had this season, and if it is to be Matt O'Reilly's last game, I'm pretty sure he'll want to go out with a bang.
No doubt about that. Do you think the ongoing speculation, Paddy, affects players? You know, there's a lot going on. Touched on it on our transfer show earlier, just about players aren't daft. They're online. They're on their phones. All these kind of things. Do you think players are as happy as managers when the window finally closes and they know that this is the group that they're going to be part of at least until January?
I wouldn't read too much into that. I think for me, more than anything, what you see with Celtic is a lot of players that are like, they know that they're going to be there. They know that they're going to be part of that season that's coming up against that they're coming up against, and what they will probably be thinking is, right, if this guy's got the move or not. If they've not got the move and they're going to be a part of it, it'll be arm round the shoulder, let's kick on as a team. I think when we look at the players we've lost over the last few seasons, Jota have been a massive win. It hasn't really been too daunting. I think that we've put a lot of pressure as supporters onto the guys coming in, and understandably we want to win. That's the mantra of the club. But I think as players, I don't think it would really affect the team morale, or I don't really think it would upset the rhythm of them too much for the ones that are staying, more down to the fact that this is expected at the club now. And we see it with managers as well. You know, we look at the 2 years we got with Ange. I don't think I felt too bad when he left. I was obviously upset when he
I'm still upset.
Listen, a great manager, but what I'm meaning is that we are getting a lot more used to the Brendan Rodgers treatment now, and whether that's with players as well, we are getting used to those moments of, let's not grow too attached because they're probably going to be away in 2 seasons. I think that'll be the same with the squad as well. Will it have an impact? Yes, but I don't think for that long.
Okay. I think with Brendan Rodgers right now, I mentioned in the weekly, he seems in a very good position, regardless of the transfer noise, and that's obviously part and parcel of being Celtic manager. But I'm almost at a stage where I'm looking forward to his press conferences as much as I'm looking forward to the game at the weekend, because you get the headlines or the nicknames box office Brendan and all that kind of stuff. But he's engaging to listen to. And I know we'll laugh with Miffs. I don't think Miff's still quite there yet with Brendan. I don't think he's fully accepted him back into the fold. But
he sent that bridgeometer,
aye.
And he was way brodge. So I think he's back.
We're getting him, aren't we? We're getting him back. But I think Brendan Rodgers is in a good place. And I was going to ask the question about how we're playing. So we had this situation 12 months ago. And keeping in mind some of his teams in the early part of last season, he was starting guys like Lager Bielka, guys like Louis Palma, Yang, guys that at this moment in time aren't starters for Celtic.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's got his back four are fit and firing. He's got Adam Ida now to call upon. He's got a revitalised Nicholas Kuhn. And all of a sudden, and it's no coincidence, when you get better players fit and available, you play better football. But the question's been asked, I've asked it and others have asked, is the stuff he's playing right now domestically, and I know we're only 3 games in, is it as exciting, if not more exciting, than some of the stuff we were seeing under Ange?
I think, for me, almost different in a sense. I think there's more patience to our build-up under Rodgers, and I think that there are points where you're sitting in the stands and you're like, pass it. Especially, I think Nicholas Kuhn, that's one thing for me he needs to work on, is he's been a little bit more decisive if he's going to play the pass or play the shot. But the build-up from the back into these dangerous positions is what's really, really impressed me the most, coming more so down the right-hand side. I think that Alistair Johnson seems to have got off to a very good start to the season. I think for me, that midfield three, the movement off the ball has been brilliant. And I think an incredible start to the season for Callum McGregor too. He's making us tick. But when it comes into that final third, I still think there's a bit too much retention of the ball. And I do think we need to be a little bit more clinical. Now, I'm saying that we've scored how many goals?
9 and 3.
9 and 3. But what I'm saying is that there are points where we've seen it as Celtic fans. We could go and blow teams away and then we make it quite uncomfortable with it for ourselves in the last 5-10 minutes of the game. Is it as free-flowing as Ange? No, not for me. Is it great football to watch? It's great. It's excellent build-up play, and I do like the patience, and that's where I think the likes of James Forrest is coming in and really being beneficial to it. And I do see the idea of Nicholas Kuhn and taking those extra touches here or there, but sometimes I think we're missing a few of those final passes, and it's one guy that always seems to be the frustrated figure is Kyogo.
Wait till we get these new signings in, Paddy. That'll be a thing of the past. One thing I really like, and there's a bit of balance about it, whether by a bit of luck or a bit of design, but you get Nicholas Kuhn on the right hand side who seems willing to go at his fullback, and in a way that, you know, Ange would always encourage. Go and take the chance, go and take the risk. Sometimes it'll work for you, sometimes it won't, sometimes it'll create a goal, sometimes you'll lose possession. That's the life of a winger. And Nicholas Kuhn's certainly encouraged to do so. And as exciting he's been in the first few games, he has given it away a few times. He's taken the wrong option at times. He's not been able to get past his man. He's maybe shot when he should have passed when he should have shot, these kind of things. Some accuse him of trying to, you know, dribble it into the net and, you know, letting go earlier on. All these things, but I think that's okay. And I think Brendan Rodgers is okay with it because he's shown a lot of bravery. And by contrast, on the other wing, you've got James Forrest, who isn't doing those things, but I'm not saying it's a negative. James is taking on his players at times, but on other occasions when it's not the right fit, he's just recycling possession, giving it back through his midfield, and we'll start again, and maybe we'll work it out the right-hand side. And I think, as I say, by luck or by design, it's given Celtic quite a nice balance on the wings.
I do think there is a nice balance across the full midfield. I'm looking at the likes of Hatate. I think he has been instrumental in the first few games of the season of that link-up. Just some of his movement, you see it naturally week in, week out with Matt O'Reilly. But the one that is dictating that recycling of play, and if you watch him closely, is Callum McGregor. I think he's very quick off the mark to create the space. You see the goal at Easter Road. He made that space for himself. I think he's super clever at that. But what we've been really good at is using the likes of Hatate and using the likes of O'Reilly to really pin the defences in and creating that space outside the box. I'd like to see a bit more of that this season. I think that as a team, we love trying to get into the final third. We love trying to get to the byline and cutting it back. I think that's a majority of our goals come for that kind of setup. But we've got a guy with a great left peg hanging about outside, waiting for a shot as well, and I do think we'll see a bit more of that this season.
Yeah, I think so. Callum McGregor's goal return hasn't been massive in the last few seasons either, and it'd be good to see him. He's obviously got the great goal at Easter Road. Be good to see him add a few more this time around, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a few like Lambert-esque finishes would be nice.
Yeah, we'll take them. Paddy, we're nearly done for this one. We're starting to head towards the end of the recording. Time to put you on the spot in terms of your scoreline predictions. Some big numbers doing the rounds last week between me and Bridle. I think there was 4s and 5s and maybe even 6s and 7s doing the rounds. Eventually Celtic had to settle for 3-1 on the day. What do you think we're going to see this time around? 12 o'clock kick-off in Paisley. I
think it'll be a tighter game. I think 2-1. I do think that St Mirren will give us a bit of a game on Sunday, and I think that we'll match it, but just with the things off the park, I think things are maybe just a little bit unsettled in terms of the mindset of our manager. And I do think the team might wear it a little bit as well, especially with those players that are maybe thinking, is this my last game?
Maybe so.
Bit of a staggered game from us, but I'll say 2-1. I still think we'll be too strong.
Yeah, and the most important thing is to get the 3 points and maintain the 100% record before we head into the Glasgow derby, of course, next weekend. Yeah. I'm going to go 3-0, Paddy. I think we're averaging 3 goals, and I don't see any reason why that'll change. There's a wee bit of, unrest in the camp, if you like. That's just natural. But I think, despite things going on, there's a lot of noise for Matt O'Reilly, for Rio, for Kyogo, all these guys. Actually being on the park is their escape from that. Yeah. That's where you go and do your thing and be the footballer you are. And I think we'll see a pretty confident and a pretty convincing Celtic on Sunday. So I'm going to go for 3-0. But as I say, the most important thing above all else is the 3 points, and let's hope we can get them. Paddy, your final thoughts as we start to wrap this one up?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we see Kyogo. I'm hopeful that we see Matt O'Reilly. I'm hopeful that it's not their last games.
Not ready for that yet by any stretch. Folks, thanks for joining us here for the Countdown to Kick-Off show. Thanks to Paddy, of course, for joining me. We'll be back shortly after the final whistle on Sunday, so a 12 o'clock kick-off. We'll be back some point around about mid-afternoon, and here's hoping for another massive Celtic win.